All right, welcome back to Sports Wars and Sports Picks World Cup recap and review, as well as preview. We're going to be previewing today the semifinal matchups of World Cup 2022 with a little discussion as we go along to the semifinals about how some of those teams got there and which teams got out. And again, this will be broadcast on Sports Wars, where you can like, share, and subscribe to continue to support what is this sort of informed analysis. And there's all continuing World Cup picks, as well as other picks at sportspicks.locals.com, where people for $10 a month, those that pay for it, or you can join for free if you want, get valuable free handicapping and another insightful recommended picks all year long, and you make money, as every member of sportspicks.locals.com that's taken the recommended picks has made money for 2 years running. We'll see how the World Cup finishes up as to whether how profitable it may or may not end up. So the semifinals end up, the four semifinalists: Argentina, Croatia, Morocco, and France. Two of those teams were anticipated to be in the semifinals and predicted by odds to be there. Argentina, with Lionel Messi and coming off their exceptional good form throughout the last several seasons, including winning Copa. And France coming off defending their World Cup championship from 2018. Morocco is the first ever team from the African continent to make it there. And so I thought that there would be an overachieving African team on the African continent, particularly because this is more of a traditional location. South Africa was not. South Africa felt more like Europe because it was their winter, whereas there's enough heat here for this to feel more like give a little bit of a local edge. Also, it was easier to travel for a lot of the North African fans, and you've seen that reflected in the intense fan bases for Saudi Arabia, for Tunisia, for Iran, for Morocco as well. But extraordinary Moroccan run to get to the semifinals, and then Croatia makes it back to the semifinals again to a World Cup. They find a way to do it, and no matter what the circumstances are. So first, let's talk about Argentina and how they got there. Argentina started off a little scary, losing to Saudi Arabia. Such a big event in Saudi Arabia that they've made it a national holiday. And apparently all the players are going to get a free Rolls Royce. It was that kind of thing. Then the Argentine bounced back. And Messi looks like, at times, he looks like Maradona 86. He looks deeply, deeply determined to win this cup. At key times, at key junctures, he has stepped up and found a way to score in ways often only Lionel Messi can do it. Your thoughts, Gordon, about Argentina's performance to date coming into the cup?
Yes. Well, I think if you ask me, one thing we have to talk about, just to give it the credit it deserves, the best play of this World Cup, bar none, was not a goal. It was a pass. And it was the pass that Lionel Messi made on the move, in traffic, through a crowd of Dutch defenders. I mean, he is moving with the ball. There's an entire sea of orange in front of him, and he makes a pinpoint pass through a crowd to set up that goal. Just unbelievable. I mean, nothing like it. It was just out of this world. I think now, no doubt about it, the debate over who is the greatest player ever in this game should revolve around three players: Pelé, Maradona, and Lionel Messi. And that's the kind of highlight, that Messi pass, that you will not see, frankly, from Pelé or Maradona. If you look up Pelé and Maradona highlights, you will see spectacular goals, lots of spectacular goals. You will have a hard time finding a pass like that. I mean, for those of us who are basketball fans, it's like a Magic Johnson or Larry Bird no-look pass, but in a crowd of even more players. So just to highlight that, it was Messi at the top of his game. It was just amazing. It seems to me that Argentina has gotten better every game of this tournament. After that awful rough start, Every game after that, they've gotten better and better because they've had tough competition against the likes of Mexico and Poland. They didn't get a game against a Qatar, or anybody like that. And so in each game, they seem to me to be getting better and better. So and that in the back coming forward, Otamendi and EJ Fernandez at center half. Those guys both play for Benfica. And I was remembering the other day, Benfica won their Champions League group this fall with PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, in that group. So those guys were defending against against Messi, and keeping him from scoring goals. So, yeah, I think Argentina's been getting better and better through the tournament every game. And so I think they're going to be too much for Croatia. All credit to Croatia. They just endure. But focusing on Argentina, Argentina's playing better and better every single game. And Messi in particular, yes, he is determined. And he is the catalyst at the center who makes that work. I mean, that's one contrast. If you watch the Brazil-Croatia game, Neymar, as great a player as he is, he can't do exactly what Messi did in that game against the Netherlands, which is thread the needle of a pass through a crowd like that. And you notice Neymar tried a couple times, but the passes were kind of hard. They were hard to control. So Messi, with a lot of young players around him, good players, but some of those guys who started that game against the Netherlands, 21, 22, 23 years old. But Messi is holding it all together. So they're just looking fantastic. And I think their chances right now of winning are really good.
Thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I think exactly what he said. That play epitomizes him being the best player in the world and possibly of all time.
Yep.
But I actually had the Netherlands possibly winning this one because Argentina really hadn't stepped up to play at the level that I thought they were capable of. And then it was a rhythm thing. And the Netherlands had just looked so smooth as butter, running down the field, scoring. The goals they scored throughout the cup and until this point were just rhythm passing plays that were just beautiful to watch. Yeah. And I think I guess it took the greatest player in the world to kind of overcome that and get those young guys to come together. But he's exactly right. They've been playing better and better every game. And that's what you have to do, especially when you're coming together, not playing a bunch together the way a team like Argentina hasn't. Yeah. But I wouldn't count Croatia out. I mean, those guys, that's probably the most experienced team in the World Cup. And not in a bad way. They're not too old. They're not at that like real old where they're past they're probably right at the edge of their prime, but they're not past it yet. They're guys that grit and they play well together. And I mean, we see what they did in 2018 going all the way to the finals there, and you can't overlook that. So this is another game that might come down to penalty kicks.
Yeah, I agree. And while we're talking about how Argentina got there, you're exactly right. The Netherlands should get a lot of credit. They scored 2 spectacular goals at the end of that game. And Weghorst, right? Wout Weghorst, right? Who'd ever even heard of the guy? Comes off the bench. And first, that flick-on header was just a brilliant goal, both the cross and Weghorst's header. But then the set play. The set play was brilliant. It was Louis van Gaal at his best. Set up Weghorst in the line, hard pass to him to turn and shoot. So the Netherlands scored 2 amazing goals to get back in that game at a time when I think we all thought it's over, right? Argentina's up 2-0. This thing's over. So, boy, the Netherlands, give them a lot of credit. They made it an amazing game. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, they played very well. I mean, you look at Argentina. The Argentina, for Messi, youngest player ever to both score and assist at a World Cup, oldest player ever to both score and assist at a World Cup. Argentina is the only team left in the semifinals that did not lose a game in the last 5 games coming into the World Cup, which historically has been a critical barometer for World Cup success. And the other 3 all did. They're top 5 in talent. They're top 5 in form. And they are the only team in the semifinals that has, from an expected goal perspective, has won every single game, even the Saudi Arabia game, often by big margins. Well, what's interesting is this year, at least, 3 of the 4 teams have made it to the semifinals while losing a majority of their matches to date on expected goals, even France. Now, France, to transition a little bit to France, and we'll come back to Croatia and Morocco. France, with all the injuries, there were some big doubts. There's the curse of teams not being able to repeat in the World Cup in the modern era. There's and then there's their form. Their form in the League of Nations was not that great. But they got they got back at Denmark. They were able to survive that. Denmark kind of underachieved, given some expectations coming into the tournament, whereas the Dutch performed a little bit probably better than expectations, but at least up to those expectations. The French, though, it was the English. And if the English are going to lose, they're going to lose on penalties. Somebody's going to miss a penalty kick in a big game. And Harry Kane missed that second penalty kick. And the whole reason the English had an expected goal edge in that game, if you factor out penalties, the French had the edge. The English edge came entirely from getting not one, but two penalties. Harry Kane nailed the first one. Yeah. Poor Harry Kane couldn't nail the second one. And the English the Three Lions are still cursed when it comes to penalties in big competitions.
That's right. Boy, nobody expected, though, that Harry Kane would miss a penalty kick when the World Cup was on the line. Not in a million years, right? Mr. Reliable. The guy who always gets the job done when it comes to things like that. When I saw that ball blow over the bar, I was stunned. I was utterly shocked. So, but, it can happen to the best of them. And yes, but you're right, the English, I don't know if it's the pressure, but there's some kind of curse. The poor English. I mean, at least this time it wasn't, players who'd just been pulled off the bench, right? Which was such a disastrous choice in the last Euro. But still, they can't make penalty kicks when the game's
not when they need line.
It. No, that's right.
Well, the poor Three Lions.
Now, quickly, I'll say one thing I do worry about when it comes to France, though, and some people have complained about this. I don't know if I agree with all the complaints, but that back line did a lot of fouling at times when there
could have been 3 or 4 penalties. In that game. They were bad penalties.
Yeah. Yes. And a bunch of the fouls were not necessary. They were fouling people in and around the box. And especially when you're in and around the box, right? You don't foul there. They were committing a lot of fouls back there. I assume they'll talk about that before this next game. But boy, they got to get that under control, because otherwise they're going to get a number of penalties called on them.
Thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, coming into the Cup, initially France was my favorite. I thought they were going to repeat, but then there was rumblings of some just stuff going on over there. And then, of course, when Benzema was called out and not going to play in the Cup, I kind of was like, well, maybe they're not going to do so well. I was overlooking the fact that they did come into the Cup losing, 5 out of their last 6 matches. But in recency bias, you look back, I mean, it was only a year ago, in 2021, they won the UEFA Nations. So, I mean, and then 4 years ago, they won the Cup. So, I mean, that's pretty recent too. And so you couldn't count this team out. Obviously, they looked really well. And I agree with the issues with the penalties. They're fouling somewhere. They're going to get themselves in trouble if they don't cut that out. So, because you're right, there easily could have been 4 or 5 penalties called in that game.
Yeah. The other person who has really shown up for them is Giroud, right?
Yeah, Olivier the 36-year-old who wasn't expected to play much.
Yes. And of course, to my mind, I always think of him as quintessentially French in some ways. I mean, it's probably just that the guy is always perfectly coiffed, right? He looks like he came straight from the salon to the game, but he clearly loves playing for France. And he has shown up in this Cup just solid. That goal he scored on the header to give him the win was huge. So, and my impression is that he's just a very solid presence in that side. An older senior player. He doesn't have, the whole burden on his shoulders like an Mbappe does. So he doesn't have that kind of pressure. But boy, he just seems to have really shown up for them up front to give them goals when they need him.
Absolutely. And then they're going to play the big surprise. First ever African team to make the semifinals.
Yes.
A team that has played a very disciplined defensive style that I think they've only, 1 goal or something they've given up in the whole Cup.
Yes.
And they play that smart counterattacking, looking for opportunities, and then otherwise they play that low block, locked in style. They're going to make you go around them and around them and around them, and you're not going to find holes in between them. Like the Greek team that won the Euros years back, I think however long ago it was. And so I think, well coached by a Frenchman of Moroccan origin. Indeed, there was a bunch of Moroccans partying in Paris. So this will be almost like a local colonial history, regional rivalry. It'd almost be like if Zidane was playing Algeria or something. To have France and Morocco in the semifinals, in playing it in Africa, a bunch of Moroccan fans that live in Paris and France. It will be an interesting match. France is heavy favorites because in part surprised that Morocco got here. So and expectation that France would do it. In fact, France is even money to win it all at this stage. Argentina is almost around 2-1, a little bit less than that, depending on where you get it. And then Croatia and then Morocco. Morocco is still seen as a long shot because historically no team like them has ever won the World Cup. Teams like them have won other competitions, have won Copa America competitions and Euro competitions like the Greeks, etc. But no one has ever pulled off the total complete upset like would be if Morocco managed to sneak their way in. But it's a defense that is very hard to crack. It's an offense that's very opportunistic. They're playing with great glee. They got a huge fan base. They had a great celebration where they were throwing the coach up and down after the win. To beat Portugal. A little interesting, the choice to bench Cristiano Ronaldo. Didn't burn him in the first game. Maybe it did in the second, only playing him a half. Maybe that wasn't the right move. You can make some arguments there. It definitely ended the Messi-Ronaldo debate, and nobody's benching Lionel Messi. But what's your thoughts on Morocco in the final stage and Portugal kind of underachieving, which we predicted might happen?
Yeah. Boy, I tell you, looking back at Morocco's run in this tournament, I now realize that I have underestimated that team. They have quietly dominated other teams defensively. So their expected goals against in every single game has been 1 or under 1. The only team that got to 1 expected goal against Morocco was Canada, got to 1.01. But everyone else against them has less than 1 expected goal. So although it's true that they have been outplayed in terms of expected goals, they have not given a single team even 1 expected goal against them when they're playing against the likes of Spain and Portugal, right? So, boy, France better not underestimate Morocco. When they did it to Spain and then they did it to Portugal, and we're talking about knockout rounds, right? Those weren't group games. Those are games where everything's on the line. That team has figured out how to defend against the best. So I'm impressed. I think they have figured out a formula defensively that works, and they know they just have to get 1 goal, right? In that Portugal game, shortly before the half, when they scored that goal, they flashed to the bench and they showed Cristiano Ronaldo, right, turn to his friend and was sort of saying, "Ooh, that's not good." And I think it's because they all knew Morocco knows if we get 1, you're in trouble because it's a fortress back here. We're not letting anything get in. So it's going to be interesting to see if and how France can break that open because they are as tough a defensive team as I remember seeing in the Cup. And that shows up not just in the results, but in the actual expected goals against. Their expected goals against have been outstanding. And against top teams, against Spain and Portugal. So I must say, I think they have a real shot at another upset. Now, they do have to get that 1 goal, and that can prove really difficult for them. So we'll see what happens. But
maybe
I'm now
not
intrigued.
If the French keep tackling people in the penalty box.
Right. Yes, exactly. That might be all it takes. Yeah, that's right.
Your thoughts, Cody? I mean, I thought while Ronaldo was not at peak form, it was a mistake not to play him. You're talking about a guy who's a veteran, who's experienced, who can do things that nobody else on that pitch can do. And it worked okay in the first game. I think a lot of Portuguese fans will now think it was a mistake, and the coach will get the blame for what happened in the second game. To Ronaldo's credit, you didn't see a lot of public complaining. Anybody who doubted that he loved playing for his country, that was a race because he was the player crying at the end of that loss.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a mistake. I mean, like we just talked about a minute ago, a week ago, they there were still people that were having that debate, whether it was Messi or Ronaldo. Like you said, it's settled now, but absolutely, I mean, it's a mistake. If he's ever in that conversation, you don't bench him. That doesn't make sense to me now. In the game before, where the other guy scoring, to see it in the way, well, it worked, so we can always say that, well, it worked. But coming in here, it's just really dangerous territory, benching one of the greatest players that's ever lived. And I was not a fan of it, and I think the coach is going to get a lot of flack for that.
Especially against Morocco, where you needed those long shots. When he's one of the greatest long shot shooters in the history of the game. And you weren't going to get there the way they got there the game before. They weren't going to be breaking them down with wide open shots to right in the box. That doesn't happen against this Morocco disciplined defense.
Correct.
By the way, a manager took over, I think, in August. So as if I recall correctly.
Wow.
So I mean, France is heavily favored, but I think Morocco is very much a live dog. Now, talk about the big underdog win.
Morocco has never, or not Morocco. No team has ever won the World Cup with a foreign coach, and I wonder how that's going to come into play with that Moroccan
and
coach.
The question
being
is
born
he
in
really,
France, even though he's that's exactly what
he's natively Moroccan. So
but born in France.
I mean, now the big upset that did happen was Croatia against Brazil. So it was one of the bets I did not take Brazil. I planned on taking Brazil, but they were bigger favorites than like Argentina was against Saudi Arabia in certain respects. I mean, to advance, they were like 16-1 against Brazil. And I almost took Croatia because, as I said, it's the game with soccer. I mean, I love Brazil. I think they've been playing beautiful ball. And I think Croatia's benefited from both being a smart, savvy team and a little bit of luck. But it's like that's a big, big underdog for a tough Croatia team that it was not going to be intimidated by Brazil at all.
Right.
And they definitely weren't intimidated by those penalties. And they've been. I mean, that's how they knocked out. That's how they knocked out the Russians. That's how they won several World Cup games in the past. They did it again. Luka Modric, those kind of guys. That's what they do well. They have some of the top strikers in the game, smart defenders, savvy coaches. What'd you think about the shocking upset of Brazil and Brazil now not making even a World Cup final since 2002? I think it's the longest stretch they have not even made a final in their history.
Yeah, that was a shocker. Boy, first off, though, definitely those Croatian players are hard. There's just not another word for them. Those guys are hard, like hard as iron. They don't bend. They don't break. You will never see any stress. Modric, Perisic, both of those guys. You're exactly right. One thing that shows up is when they played Brazil, there was no intimidation factor there. They're not intimidated by anyone. But at the same time, they definitely have this chip on their shoulder, right? They're a small nation they're one of those small nations that has played this game incredibly well for a very long time without winning a major tournament. But they know how good they are. But at the same time, they've got a bit of a chip on their shoulder about it. And yes, their senior guys, Modric and Perisic especially, they have shown up completely. And they don't make mistakes. That's the other thing you notice. Even when, as Brazil had, what did Brazil have? Like 2.5 expected goals against them at least. But Croatia doesn't make defensive mistakes. So even if you're getting good shots, a whole lot of them are going to get blocked. And you're not going to get a shot from an easy angle. So they're just very solid. They're reliable. They're dependable. They endure. They just endure. So, you got to give them an awful lot of credit. And there, too, no one better underestimate them because they sneak up on you. That's what they do. They don't give away any easy goals. And then they get one, and before you know it, you're in trouble. So it's impressive because it's oftentimes this cup, especially, it hasn't been pretty to watch, frankly, a lot of the time. Sometimes it has, but they just don't make mistakes, and they're just hard. They're hard as nails. So, and I think that's one thing that's shown up, especially when I was thinking the other day about how especially the elite teams in this tournament, like Brazil, Spain, Germany, France, all those guys are playing in the Champions League this season. And a lot of people have talked about how between their league play and the Champions League and the Nations League, some of those players are playing an unbelievable number of minutes. There have been a lot of players complaining about how this is too much. We can't do this. Our bodies can't take playing every other day like this. I have wondered a lot if that has eventually hurt some of the elite teams, that their players have all been playing around the clock for a few months now. But boy, the Croatians, I just think it doesn't matter. They're just made of iron. So I wonder if just sheer endurance has played a role in their success, maybe.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, just even going back to the last cup, them making the finals and getting past England, and those guys, just their grit, their experience, and their chemistry. Argentina cannot overlook them. If they have a game like they had against Saudi Arabia, they're not making it, and that's sad for Messi, because I think I'd like for Messi to win. I don't know that that's going to happen. I'm not sure that he's even the favorite right now, but I'd like for Messi to win, just because that'll solidify that for him. Getting a World Cup win for him, being the greatest player ever. It's just it's huge, and it's a big part of it. And being able to win it for Argentina, for his country, be huge for him. But you can't overlook those guys. They've got experience, chemistry, and just grit. They're tough. They're going to last all game long. So all 90 minutes, you better be on your guard.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I think my own lean of the Final Four is I like Argentina. I like them on the odds. I just think that they have shown more leading up to this, number one. Yeah. Number two, Mbappe and Gerard and all the rest have been great. But the determination you can see in Messi's play, and you can see it on his face at key times. It was like the last time Zidane flashed it for France in 98. Yeah. You saw time, especially against Brazil, you saw him come out determined to win that game. Yeah. But otherwise, the only time I've ever seen that myself in a cup, I didn't, had not only seen glimpses of the highlights of Pelé, was Maradona. I mean, that was one of the first, I think it was the first World Cup I ever watched as a kid. Yeah. And Maradona was just single-handedly determined. People always remember, the little hand of God that beat the English. Right. But that second drive of his is still considered maybe the greatest World Cup goal of all time. Yeah. He just walks through the entire English defense by himself, and then just, taps it past the goalkeeper and knocks it in. Yeah. Messi's playing with that kind of mindset, with that kind of mentality. I think it carries them to the cup. I want it to happen, but I think it does carry to them. But I don't think anyone should count either Morocco or Croatia. The French are still uber talented, but I think the wrong team is favored. I think Argentina should be the favorite. Yeah. Your thoughts, Gordon?
I agree. I think that's right. And again, they're playing better and better every single game. Again, when I look back and realize that both Otamendi and Fernandez at center back and center half play for Benfica, and Benfica's had an incredible run in the Champions League playing against the very best. And the chemistry that they're developing up front with Messi and the young guys up front, they're getting better every single game, better and better. So now that they're playing, I think, close to the very top of their game, even the Dutch can score two amazing goals and not able to beat them. I think Argentina should be the favorite. There's no doubt about it. First of all, Croatia has gotten a bit lucky. For all their grit, when you look back, right, they gave up 3 expected goals in one game, 2.5 in another. They've had a run of luck. So I think that's some reason to think Argentina is likely to get past them. And then whatever happens in the France-Morocco game, I don't think either of those teams is up to beating Argentina when Messi is completely determined. And you're exactly right. Like that pass he made against the Netherlands, the amount of focus, just that highest level of focus that it takes to make a play like that tells you everything about his state of mind. I think that's right. So I agree. I think Argentina's, I think they're likely to win. Obviously anything can happen, but that's who I would pick to win. That's right.
What do you think, Cody?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the conversation begins and ends with Lionel Messi. With Lionel Messi, that team should be the favorite to win. And where the numbers stand right now, France is plus 105, Argentina's plus 170, Croatia's plus 700, and Morocco's plus 900. So if you're betting any of those future odds, I mean, Argentina's the pick there. If you're going to pick Croatia or Morocco, you're way better off getting plus 450 on Croatia to advance over Argentina, and then And then, I think it's plus 600 from Morocco to advance, maybe plus 5 something from Morocco to advance over France, and then taking your winnings and putting it on the finals there. But with Argentina, that wouldn't be the case. You wouldn't make as much. But so Argentina at plus 170, they got the best odds anyways, to some degree. I mean, France obviously is the best odds, but you stay away from us there. But they should be closer to where France is at plus 100.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a fun World Cup. We'll see if it finishes in a classic way. Maybe it'll end up being Croatia and Morocco in the final. People will be like, what in the world? That could be wild, but it's had some definitely dramatic moments. Yeah. It's had some fun moments. It's had some shocking moments. Biggest upset ever was Saudi Arabia over Argentina. Yeah. And what a World Cup it would be if it started with the greatest upset in the history of the World Cup, and the team upset is the team that actually wins the World Cup. For the legend to cap his career as the greatest ever, at least arguably so. We'll find out. We'll be back with a final review when it's time for the final itself. Remember, everybody, to like, share, and subscribe here at Sports Wars. And if you want more free sports handicapping content, you can join for free at sportspicks.locals.com. Thanks, everybody.